Elden Ring is a sandbox open world presenting the player with a jumbled pile of often incongruous gameplay systems, the value of which lies in the meta act of crafting your own tailored experience out of this expansive toolkit. However, the game's biggest flaw, arising from its patented FromSoft ambiguity, is the lacking definition of mechanics. A new player going in raw is unlikely to properly intuit these myriad building blocks, and thus is unlikely to craft their ideal version of Elden Ring. That happened to me. I tackled the map in an odd manner, leading to wildly fluctuating difficulty. When overpowered, each obstacle provided minimal resistance. Many combat mechanics, mainly defensive, though occasionally offensive too, became obsolete due to how little engagement was necessary to succeed. A similar effect was seen with the opposite polarity. There exist a select few dominant strategies which undermine most other mechanics. In my case, Spirit Ashes, specifically Banished Knight Oleg, tipped these scales back in my favor by too great a degree. I quickly grew bored and frustrated as neither situation produced an entertaining gameplay experience, resulting in me dropping the game 60 hours in, left with a very negative impression. This guide serves two purposes: doing right by my past self and helping new players tackle Elden Ring blind. Goals accomplished through lean, streamlined resources one can use to help structure their playthrough. My rough maps and explanations are not meant as hard and fast rules, but rather general information to apply as you see fit. They're not conclusions themselves, they simply help you reach your own conclusions. Actually, no, that's true. This video's real purpose is being a reference point for future Elden Ring projects I do. If I ever say I'm not over-leveling or playing in sequence, this is the relative balance I am aiming to maintain. For example, in my upcoming challenge run, you may ask, why is Ricky struggling with Radahn 1? Just upgrade your weapons. The answer is no, because that increased power would undermine other combat mechanics, reducing the engagement with the fight. Therefore, I will beat him at this level prior to progressing to the next breakpoint. My resources seek to regulate three aspects of power scaling. In descending significance, they are weapon upgrade level, Scadutree Blessing, and vigor. Rune level was not included because 300 hours has not been enough time to glean where a player should be at any given point in the game, especially since some builds necessitate heavy investment to get off the ground. The first of those three will be the primary metric with which I'll subdivide Elden Ring's progression. I'll do so by referring to their grade as opposed to the actual weapon level. This unifies rhetoric between regular and somber smithing stones. Do note there is implied tolerance in each tier. A practical application: Redmane Castle and its boss Radahn 1 contain stones ranging from 3 to 6, with a midpoint found at around level 5. Classification at that level does not mean you can't or shouldn't use those stone 6s. Feel free to do that first upgrade to plus 16. Just note that going further will place you ahead in the difficulty curve. Also worth considering, these tiers imply an earliest point at which to tackle the obstacles too. Using our previous example, you should be safe to tackle the area at level 4 before, say, Raya Lucaria, if you want access to the content locked underground. You'll be playing at a disadvantage, yes, but the disparity likely won't be insurmountable. With adequate context established, here is the list I devised pacing out Elden Ring's content. Seen also over here, larger so you can actually read it. One side contains the game's major areas, on the right, and one comprising a clean 50 bosses I arbitrarily decided are mandatory, on the left. The reasoning being their singularity, prioritizing iterations of fights including unique movesets, like the Ice Lightning Dragonkin, Laser Shooting Falling Star Beast, Healing Ancestor Spirit, Crucible Thorn Hippo, and Buffing Magma Worm. Some encounters are featured twice, cause why not, those being Loretta and Moog. Both initial fights lock off major endings, so they might as well be required. One final point on this topic: Leonin Misbegotten can be substituted with the Crusader variant. I did not because I like having an extra early game roadblock, and I forgot that the Consecrated Snowfield one existed when I drafted my list. I never found that cave on my first completed playthrough. Though saying this, any other minor bosses, we'll call them, not included, can be scaled to their respective region of origin in the other list. So, Misbegotten Crusader should be fought around the 7 to 8 level. Speaking of, you'll notice I grouped 8 and 9 together. There are somber 9 stones, yet no regular smithing stone 9s. You go from 8s to ancient, which I have labeled as 10. My reasoning was that difficulty in the endgame begins to centralize and you probably won't experience huge variance in those last few upgrades. Plus, I honestly had no idea what other 2 tiers to consolidate. Again, 300 hours ain't enough to concretely quantify such a large, unwieldy game. I'ma still try though. At this time, you've surely noticed the other 2 not yet mentioned aspects of power scaling. I will cover all of the DLC at the end since its bespoke system is positioned after the base game's power scaling and it entails a different approach to pacing. Vigor, by contrast, is pretty straightforward. If you wish to know how HP can impact Souls combat, refer to the Talisman section of my 7-hour DS3 video. The card should be popping up in the corner right about now. I think it's on that side, maybe that one. On this list, the provided breakpoints stand as a ceiling. Avoid increasing the stat beyond these levels, as excessive bulk can dramatically reduce the threat of bosses in that tier. The aforementioned DS3's more restrictive world spaced out flask upgrades, so having super high vigor makes less of an impact on difficulty, as you're bottlenecked by weak stored healing. Again, refer to my previous video for more information, this time the claw section. Elden Ring makes it easy to bolster your flask, so one should taper their max HP to retain difficulty. Though this metric primarily serves to tell you when you should start leveling vigor more, so you won't be walled by the game's infamous vigor checks. Now that we have gone over the base game information, I will now crudely visualize this data on Elden Ring's map using my ancient version of Photoshop to the best of my abilities. Clearly I am not a graphic designer. Hopefully the gist of the information is legible. I think the vigor textures had the worst execution, but this project's already taken longer than it should have. I'm not rectifying it. Besides, as stated earlier, health isn't the most significant scaling metric. If you can't discern the data, that's fine. Alright, elephant in the room. Plainly apparent to any Elden Ring veterans in the audience. The escalating difficulty looks entirely smooth and logical. How could someone screw it up? In hindsight, once you understand the scope of the game, it seems silly anyone could be tripped up. A true enough statement, yet there's still merit to my guide, found in the finer points of progression and the potential sources of friction. Firstly, this starting area of Limgrave. You won't be staying at 0 or 1 for long. You can't merely bum rush Godric and Leonin immediately, but if you linger long exploring, you will rapidly outpace those early tiers. A famous moment in the universal Elden Ring experience, the opening hours teach the player that there are multiple paths to victory by hyperbolizing the core gameplay loop. Due to this exaggeration, the amount of power you amass will quickly raise you through the rankings. It's advised if you want a fair fight, Stormvale and Morn should be some of the first areas you visit. Don't be like me in my failed first playthrough and save them for last. Luckily, the difficulty curve mellows out past those first couple areas, slowing, allowing for more thorough exploration without overleveling. This yellow bit in the corner is the Moonlight Altar, accessed later in the game, not the village of the Albinarics underneath. Would be funny if it was though. A key event takes place in Liurnia up north. You gain access to Ranni's quest. Her storyline will take you through to Caelid and eventually underground, which I forgot to pick up. I also mapped this out. Maybe incorrectly. I always get these areas mixed up. I never remember the order just looking at the map. If you do this quest, which I didn't in my first playthrough, nearly all the game's otherwise ambiguous outliers in the power scaling, the ones off the main story's beaten path, will be tackled in sequence. Don't be like me. Do Ranni's quest, even if you don't want that ending. Also, as my heat map and boss list implies, wrap around southwest to Railucaria prior to Caelid. In summary, don't linger in Limgrave, head northeast to Ranni, and that's basically all the guidance you need to ensure your Elden Ring playthrough won't get off the rails at the start. Upon reaching level 5, there aren't many snags to be wary of from here on. Well, except Morgott, mirroring his early game appearance, round 2 attempts to show the player how far they've come. Another point where the extent of your exploration has a massive impact on difficulty. Langdell is kind of way tougher than this boss, much of Altus is as well. Hell, the proceeding underground is sorta too. Morgott is arguably the best boss in Elden Ring, at least the base game. Do yourself a favor and bum rush the capital like you did Godric and Stormvale. Have you spotted this yellow dot yet? That's the Subterranean Shunning Grounds, a secret harder dungeon hidden in an already giant dungeon. A stiff challenge to test your mettle, a rare good memory from my first playthrough. Felt nice after being disappointed by Morgott since I blitzed him down before his Phase 2 dialogue concluded. Renala met the same fate since I fought her after exploring Caelid. Anyway, if you do brave this optional sewer on your way to Morgott, do not use the materials you find within to power up. You will quickly surpass this whole section of map. Alternatively, do what I did in my first completed playthrough to beat Black Knife Electo on the Moonlight Altar. Upgrade and use a different weapon. Throwing excess somber stones on a neat boss weapon is a great means to that end. That way, once you get through this elevated difficulty, you can revert to your primary lower level kit to churn through the earlier content. Of course, rune level might upset the balance, like if you explore Dragon Barrow early, but again, that metric isn't as impactful, so don't sweat it too much. Okay, last thing to note for the main game. Wait to upgrade to max in the mountaintops. You can still overpower Fire Giant and Nile. Optionally, do the same for Godskin Duo and Loretta too, as they can feel a little squishy at max. Applying all that we've discussed, we formed this rough line of travel for the main game. The symbols corresponding to breaks in the path, of note being the star, double cross, and @ sign. First off, the star takes us underground, but the choice exists to challenge Morgott first, hence why there is a star here and here. Next, the cross. After going through the slightly harder Volcano Manor, remember to go to the sewers if you haven't already. Finally, the @ sign. Bounce freely between the two snowfield paths as they are equally paced, taking you to the endgame. I didn't put a symbol for Mogwin Palace. Oops. I'm not fixing it now. Make this the last thing you do if you have the DLC, like after the final boss. You will power level in the Land of Shadow. They made the Scadutree system to lessen the impact on the difficulty of the lands between, but man, it wasn't a perfect solution. You'll amass millions of runes in the DLC, and the defense boost you get with each level will noticeably lessen the challenge of the final bosses. Right, DLC time. Simultaneously more and less convoluted in progression. Dancing Lion and Renala are the only two bosses you'll feasibly overpower going in blind. If you find the secret spirit spring to Scadualtus and comb through for all those juicy tree fragments, the blessing level you can reach will quash those two bosses, so be wary of that. Otherwise, power scaling is fairly flexible. I saw fit to only make 4 vague tiers. In increments of 5, totally not an arbitrary decision, I split up the new bosses. We already covered up to 5. Up to 10 boils down to Shadow Keep with a detour to Stone Coffin Fissure. These foes aren't as beefy as their contemporaries. For a fair fight, tackle them first, especially Mesmer. He is hands down the best fight in the game, top 5 in the whole series. Like Morgott, you're doing yourself a disservice if you outmuscle him with pure numbers. A strat which, again, like the Omen King, the devs included as a milestone to show how far you've come. Up to 15 is the meat of the DLC, like Stone 5 was for the base game. It comprises the paths branching out from Shadow Keep. Unless Jagged Peak led you astray, you aren't going to explore these areas and power up prior to the preceding tier. And the up to 20 tier is really a formality. Chances are if you're playing blind, you won't find every shadow fragment, so you won't need to worry about this breakpoint. Just know once you enter Anirillum, let loose. Granted, anyone who's played at that level didn't need me to say that. One last thing, as you observed, I did not scale the area difficulty. That is because I genuinely don't know. I just ran through all that shit. This game is like 100 hours long if you do it complete. Once I reach the DLC, I'm ready to be done. Sorry. Like I said, simple. The map is the only obfuscating aspect, contrary to the lands between, and why I did make a line of travel naturally. So where's that complexity I alluded to? Well, it's a 10+ hour detour I went on during the production of this guide. Our third and final resource, a Scadutree Checklist. Yes, all the information here is broadly accessible on the internet, but personally I find those methods to be a bit cumbersome, so I built my own. Using the same methodology as my previous resources, I condensed all the necessary information on a single sheet I can hold in person and refer to without touching my phone. And since these lists comprise only 2 pages, I can hold them in a single convenient sleeve. Of course, this checklist is only a small piece of the puzzle. I titled each fragment, but there's no explanation on how to obtain them. So, naturally, I wasted many hours and 2 ink cartridges to create a corresponding shadow booklet, going in depth to show how to get every item. Pages are color-coded to match the 7 sections I divided the 50 fragments into, so flipping to the one you want is easy. Though I don't actually see myself using this. It might not make sense, but it's like when you're playing Minecraft and you engineer a super powerful farm to get a resource that you need, and you spend a ton of time on it, but because of that effort, you only need to run the thing once to get all the items you could ever possibly use. By creating this book, each shadow fragment has been seared into my memory. I've internalized all the locations. You may find it novel though, so those pages, along with the other documents, will be found in the description on whatever file sharing website seems the least like malware. I'm thinking GitHub, but I don't know much about computers other than the one I got in my house. It's got a couple games on it, so maybe that one's sketchy too. Or you could just screenshot this video. Look away for the next second if you're sensitive to flashing lights. Press period or comma, or the less than greater than symbol if you prefer, to progress frame by frame to capture the pages you want. Thus ends the guide. Use this information how you see fit to better structure your next Elden Ring playthrough. I know I will. Actually, what I will do is finally start hacking away at all that Elden Ricky footage that shit's been done for months now.